Uh, Toledo City Planning Commission. Present with me are Commissioners Tom Hill, Dan Keenan, and I'm Steve Birch. We have our city planner, Todd Johnson, is via Zoom. Can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes of last?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the last planning commission meeting.
I'll second the motion so that we can have a brief discussion.
I have a motion and a second discussion. Tom?
Shall we start with the flag salute?
We should. Please rise or remove your caps if you're wearing one. And join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. That was all my discussion.
That was your discussion?
Exactly.
Can I get a vote? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Business licenses. Have you had a chance to look at those?
Indeed, yes, they all look good to me.
I didn't see anything. Get a motion to approve the business licenses.
So moved.
And I get a second.
Seconded.
Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 under new business is moving the business licenses. And should we include the meeting minutes as well?
Yes,
To the consent agenda?
yes. It really is just a streamlining process. In general, you guys don't have much discussion on those two items, and putting in the consent agenda just gets mocked.
What is the consent agenda?
It basically is a method for putting routine and redundant type things that happen at every meeting. So you do one motion and they all get passed together.
Like the meeting minutes and the business licenses
Right.
will be on the consent agenda. And it
Okay,
still has ample opportunity for discussion
right,
after the second, so.
all one item instead of multiple items.
Correct.
Okay,
And I don't need a motion for that. I want to make sure that that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Sounds okay to me.
All right. Yeah.
that sounds
sure.
great.
I could report on the city council meeting. The planning commission typically gives a presentation at the city council meeting. And we moved forward with two things that we had discussed earlier. The first being the city has now been notified that we would like to officially change the land use code on the 12% driveways. I guess that would be up to you, Todd, and the city council to move that along. And secondly, we discussed per their direction Airbnbs, and members of the council, Councilor Morgan had some reservations on it. The other council members were more in favor of it and were reticent to start discussing Fourth Amendment issues. And I believe at the end of the discussion, it was tabled for a further agenda item. Any questions on that?
That's what I heard too.
Okay, the last item of business is a discussion for ideas for the 5th Planning Commission seat. I've asked around everyone I know.
The only person that may be interested, and I would think that you want to talk to him for recommending, is Lance Colstoy. That's Donovan Grove's husband. He's a very smart guy, and he might want to be involved in city business.
Is the Grove residence in city limits?
It is.
Is it Michael Grove is not
No,
right?
not Michael Grove, it's Lance Colstoy, so it's the two new, so Lorraine and Eric built, and Donovan Ann and her husband built on.
Okay,
on a 5 acre plot within the city.
I am not familiar with the gentleman.
Well, I can follow up with him and see if there's any interest and maybe do an introduction and have a conversation with him.
Okay,
I thought of someone earlier today and now I can't pull the name back out. But I haven't talked to him or asked him about it either. Getting closer though. Closer. What about, is this an appropriate time to say, what about, what if you guys say, are you kidding? What about, Tanya Lovell?
They're outside the city limits.
Oh, aren't they just right down Pine Street from us? Yeah,
I thought they were in Castle Rock now, or
did they move?
I should probably follow up, but I think maybe.
Okay,
Levels, okay.
and I said Pine Street, I think maybe not. Yeah, Pine Street. Yeah, on Pine Street.
I'm pretty sure we made the same appeal at the big city meeting and have yet to hear.
I know someone I think it'd be wonderful, but there are two, and I guess it's okay to talk about this. Two reservations I have. I can't even think of his last name, but his name is Lucas.
Oh, mhm.
I think, honestly, as someone representing the Hispanic community here, I think would be a great thing. But Lucas's language, while he's, you know, he speaks English, but he speaks heavily accented English. And especially if he gets passionate or excited. So that could be an issue that I remind myself. And I don't know if Lucas can go 5 minutes without proselytizing. He's
Without
quite
what?
proselytizing. He's quite an
He brings the
evangelist.
soapbox in the door.
Yeah, so I mean, in so many ways, I think he'd be a fantastic addition to the city. But I think there might be drawbacks there too.
Yeah, I was pondering him also because he's my neighbor
Yeah, sure.
and yeah. That is the two questions I would have too is
Yeah.
how much proselytizing would we see? And,
Can't do that here, Lucas.
I think, I think, you know, in this context, I think potentially he would recognize the context and not do it quite, save it for like after, so to
Mhm.
speak. I think he would definitely be, he's very interested in the community and what's going on. And I think from that perspective, he does seem like a great candidate. The language thing is, it's not language, it's more accent.
Mhm. Yeah.
Could be a little bit of a challenge, but I think,
Do you have any problem?
I think that's just a trade-off that might be worth making.
I mean, I've got 5 years of Spanish behind me, so
I can pick out a word here.
He speaks good English and I understand him. It's a heavy accent. Some people might
Right.
struggle to understand him. I understand him. I presume Tom understands him. I think a lot of people do understand him. There may be some people, who might have a harder time understanding based on accent, but
I
I don't think that should be a disqualifier.
I don't think so either. I think we can ask for clarification if there's an issue.
Yeah,
And, I mean, the council is certainly not above. I've seen every member of the council at one time or another be very passionate about a topic that they were, invested in.
Yeah.
So it's not like he would be the only one with a soapbox.
yeah.
We just have a soapbox rental over here and for the city, but if you think that he might be interested, I would encourage you to approach.
I will have a talk with him. And see
Oh,
if
that'd
he's
be great,
interested.
Daniel. And one of the like key things about Lucas would be that he would be a connection to the Hispanic community. Because as it is, I don't know. We do, I don't know that we have what you would call a significant Hispanic presence here. But there are, there are plenty of Hispanic folks around.
I think
And,
there's some in town, and I think the broader Hispanic community is kind of in the surrounding area.
mhm.
But yeah, he definitely, from my conversations and observations, he seems to be a well-connected individual within that community, so.
Yeah, great,
He'd be a great candidate for that.
okay.
Now, on the off chance that he says no. Has anybody given any thought to if the city council does approve the living arrangement for the tribal policeman? And he were to move into Camp Wilson Park on a permanent basis, would we consider approaching him? Because you would then have ties with the tribe as well.
Yes. So you have to be in a residence inside the city limits for a year before you can be considered.
Okay.
for sort of- So,
But he could be as a policeman, he could, well, of course he could, I remember, police chief was on planning commission before, okay. Yeah,
so, but it would be your.
That would be the year out.
yeah, right. Well, you can always kick me off, stick at me.
Joe Notch would be a great candidate too. We just gotta get him to move into the city.
Think that'll ever happen?
Well, I'm qualified to be on the planning commission for Vader.
For Vader,
Oh, okay.
there you go.
Not doing that either.
Not doing that either. I was, if I could offer too, I don't know if there's any of the business owners, with the increase in population that you're likely to see over the next few years, I think you're gonna see a lot of pressure on downtown businesses, and you're likely to look at some zoning and other things that kind of help to define the downtown core. So it may be a good early ramp up. If you know somebody who is a business owner in one of the existing businesses downtown, or a manager or high level employee that might represent the business community, or if you've got a chamber, a business chamber of commerce or something like that, you might consider some of those folks. As the city grows, there's going to be pressure on the business community, and especially with the retail areas that we'll add during the annexation, there's likely to be concern about what types of businesses locate out of the downtown core too. So zoning plays a huge role in that. Planning commissions can too. So
It does. I don't disagree with you at all on that, Todd, but I think we have to satisfy for the particular place that is open, that we have to satisfy residency as well as business ownership.
yeah, well, that's true. But if you,
Any of the business owners that I'm aware of that actually live in town.
okay, well, I didn't know, but I thought I'd offer, do you guys have a chamber of commerce or a tourism committee or anything?
The guy raising his hand there. Joe Knox and John Novak, did you co-start that, the South Lewis County Chamber of Commerce?
Well, we restarted it with Rachel.
Okay,
Are there any members of that committee that live in the city?
No.
Oh,
And I can think of is the owner of Minlock IGA. I can't remember his name.
oh, I, no,
Stone,
He lives in Toledo?
is it
That's it.
Stone, Raleigh?
Rob.
Raleigh Stone.
Yes, he is a city limits
Oh,
person.
well, yeah, he's a business type then.
He's also pretty level headed.
He's very well.
Oh, huh, interesting.
the other thing I'll offer, because I heard you talking about the requirements that are probably in your city code. The city has an application process that they'll have to do. They'll have to accept open applications. So while we're talking about candidates, realizing that in a small town, that's probably the way it works, but you should at least advertise the opening and consider applicants, even if you have a favorite going into it. And then council themselves are the ones that appoint people to planning commission. So
I believe there is an open,
It has been advertised a couple of times.
okay, so as long as it's advertised a couple of times, if you only have one person that applies, and if they don't meet the criteria, then council, in order to maintain a quorum or in order to maintain a full planning commission, I believe they can bend the rules by just stating that. So if you're concerned, for example, that the police chief won't have a year of residency, but he meets all the other criteria, he or she, then I think council can suspend that criteria in the interest of filling a vacancy that's otherwise unfilled. So as long as there are no other applicants that meet all of the criteria, I think they can do that. Otherwise, they have to give preference to applicants who meet all the criteria. But if there are no other, then I think that they can suspend the criteria and appoint somebody who doesn't meet all of them, if it's in the interest of the community. So I'll just offer that just to the discussion. If that's something that you guys want to pursue, then that might be an avenue for you if there are no other fully qualified applicants.
I'd prefer to follow our standard rules before we start asking council to grant.
Yeah.
And
No, it's always preferred. That's why the rules are there. But if you don't have any other applicants, then
I'm sorry, next time I'm in Winlock, I'll reach out to Raleigh. If someone knows him personally in town. But I've had a couple of business dealings with him, and I think he'd be wonderful on board. If somebody wants to approach your neighbor as well, that would be excellent.
Will do.
Yeah, cool.
Well, we have no unfinished business that I'm aware of. And is there any other business that members would like to bring forward?
I think I might just mention that on the 15% driveway and the previous recommendation of Planning Commission to change the lot size minimums downtown, those two things I'll be going out for SEPA on.
Okay.
So I'll publish SEPA, and I'll probably get that in front of council. I think we talked about their September meeting, their August or September meeting. And that one, so those two will go out for a concurrent SEPA. It'll be the same SEPA document, and that'll have a 14-day comment period. And then after that, council can consider both of those and take action on them individually or collectively. I believe they wanted more discussion. When I workshopped the idea with council about the zoning, there was some really good discussion about whether or not they wanted to limit that lot size or not anymore, or if they wanted to change it. So they wanted me to bring that back as an agenda item for discussion, which I'll do after the close of the SEPA comment period. So those two items, and then on the annexation, that process has stalled out a bit. We were waiting for some information to come in for the BRB package. Now that council has annexed the area, it has to go to the Boundary Review Board for their review or not. They have 45 days to invoke jurisdiction from the time we apply. We still have not applied. And then as of today, because of non-payment for invoices, that process went on hold temporarily until the applicant pays the past due invoices from the city. So we're ready to submit. I believe now we have all of the pieces of the application, but we are waiting for the applicant to bring the city's invoicing up to current before we actually go ahead and continue that process. Before we spend any more money on it, we want to make sure the applicant's paid up, at least for their past invoices. So,
Well, it certainly hasn't prevented them from putting their land up for sale.
yeah, I saw that. Well, I mean, until the BRB considers it, until that comment period, and until council takes final action after the BRB, then it's still not annexed. So even though all signs point to yes, it's a bit of a risk for somebody to put their property up on the market still, because
the risk to buy the property.
yeah, the BRB may invoke jurisdiction and change the boundary. I think that's highly unlikely, but could happen. You never know.
In your opinion, you don't think that we're going to get there by the August deadline to get January?
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't say that earlier, but yeah, no, we missed that in the past. You know, it took too long for the applicant to get the information that we requested after we amended the boundaries and all of that. So So we weren't able to get it scheduled between applicant and noticing times and all that. We couldn't get it to council fast enough, and I can't get it to BRB fast enough. So
What about Callis Meadows now? Are they're officially approved, is that correct?
correct. That subdivision is preliminarily approved. They still need to go through their engineering plan review, and
Right.
they have been working with Mike Johnson to address his review comments on that. But right now, that's the only thing that's holding up construction is completing that engineering plan review, and then they can start their earthwork and put their utilities in and do all that.
Okay. I did want to tell the planning commission, since we were assigned to do that, that the pedestrian signs out there on 505. The two that are down, the one at 6th and the one at Betty's, are both in the hands of the state for repair and replacement. There was a email, I had a phone conversation with Manny from the state last week, and he's received 2 emails from the same person demanding that those pedestrian signs go away. And looking to see where he parks his truck, I could see why he'd be concerned. But he's parking in a non-parking area, or his truck extends into the non-parking area of 505. So council did not seem too in tune to offer relief for that. So I guess we're moving under the basis of the signs will stay where they are. However, council did recommend that the sign at Betty's be moved back from the intersection a bit to allow for truck traffic that uses Toledo Vader Road to make the turn there without taking out the sign. They have a tendency to turn left onto Toledo Vader
Yeah,
and blink right over the sign.
yeah, well, that makes sense.
I had been wondering why I never see that sign up.
Yeah, well, it got taken out the first day.
First day one, yeah. And I noticed one of them's been shot, at least one, maybe 2.
All unwanted signs will be shot. It's good to be a small town, huh? So if we could talk a little bit about next month's agenda and the months following.
Yes.
I mean, right now we don't have any pending development applications that are coming up for review. We don't have any assignments for code updates or anything like that. So what I think I'd like to do is start to use these meetings to get some input on the comprehensive plan update process. Steve, you and I have been attending those meetings, as has Eric. But I think to bring some of those topics to Planning Commission and to start talking about the comprehensive plan update process, what it is, and then, you know, to kind of use the Planning Commission meetings as workshops to evolve the city's comprehensive plan and to give you all updates rather than updating council on that. And I think the comp plan eventually does have to come before Planning Commission when it's in its draft form, but I think some early work on that may be better. That way we're in the right direction. So that way when we do draft a comp plan update,
I think we spent more the better part of 2 years working on that last time, and we essentially were asked to present it to council in final form and for their approval. The other members here were not involved in that process, and it did not take into account any of the things that were resultant from COVID. So essentially we're starting from scratch again, and I can assure you it is a laborious and long process. However, we are perhaps getting a grant from the county to.
Yes, we have. We have the grant notification. All I have to do is file the work plan, which I'm working on now. I'm putting together the consultant team and getting scopes and budgets and all that stuff put together. And then I'll file the work plan. I already have approval from council to do that. And then I'll take it to council and get approval of the scopes and budgets, and we'll revise and edit the work plan after the fact.
And it does raise the question. I assume that the grant is for staffing. For official assist, for some professional assistance. And going through that. It would be a shame not to utilize one of the volunteers that was so intricate or integral in the original drafting, and this time make them not a volunteer and actually paid staff for that. I haven't approached that person yet, so, but I'm not feeling daggers, so.
Well, I did hear Cindy with a big sigh from the back, so I don't know.
What's that?
I think I heard a big sigh from the back of the room.
Twitching back here.
She's twitching,
A little PTSD.
but part of that, and one of the reasons I've been somewhat concerned with not council's reaction, but department head reactions to the latest proposal that we all meet for a 5 or 6 year plan review. And this was in order to facilitate grant writing possibilities. That we got no feedback from the department heads whatsoever. And in order to do the 20-year, 25-year, management plan, we're going to need input from all of them with the development that we've got coming for their capital improvement projects and capital improvement programs. And that is from fire and police and public works and parks, and every division within the city is going to have to provide us with information in order for us to do our jobs. So
that's very true too. So I think there again, having those workshops with planning commission and maybe scheduling those departments to come in and talk about their plans and present them. I think that would be good. And if we have council support in that, then council can basically direct city staff to attend meetings and provide written summaries of what they need. And then we as the
I think that's what probably a good idea would be, to make that an invite, department head by department head. There's not that many, but it pretty much puts the focus on one individual only each time, in order to, this is what we want to go through. This meeting is your budget, your improvement plan, so that we have it for our management plan. And it wouldn't seem like, well, all the departments heads are gonna be here, and if I don't make it, so what,
Yeah, no, I think it would, the way we'll work through the plan is section by section. So I think it's more efficient for everybody if we can get, parks done, we can get police and emergency services done, so I think to work through those sequentially and not try to pack them all into one meeting or one workshop, I think that usually works better for cities. And this is a 2-year process. So, the county, this is the 2025 comp plan update that we're working on. So,
well, I assume you're going to be an integral part of that plan as well, and I guess we'll be looking to you for population and growth data, probably some of which we've already covered in our meetings with Lewis County, and other professional insight that you're going to be able to provide along those lines. So
yeah, we also have, Mike Johnson's got to provide infrastructure and transportation data. We've got people on board to help out with the environmental elements for streams and environmentally critical areas. We'll have to deal with archaeology, and we'll probably do that at the 20,000-foot level, unless you know a volunteer that wants to give us some insight into Toledo. And then we'll deal with town policies, for growth. So there's a lot, and that's why I was suggesting to get somebody from the business community on there, because part of that is going to be the economic development element of the comprehensive plan, which will focus on what the city's plan is for business growth and for business retention and recruitment. So be parts, and I think if it sounds good to you all to do that, then our next step is to ask council to assign that to planning commission, and then probably in August, I'll bring an outline. It's kind of similar to what we're talking about tonight, that kind of talks about here's the elements, here's the work plan, here's the different steps we'll go through each month, and here's how we get to the finish line. And then in September, we'll just begin work on the first element.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
Okay. Is that so? Mr. Chair, did you want to reach out to council and get that assignment, or would you like me to reach out and see if I can get that on the council discussion and assignment issue
Well,
for next meeting?
I'm required to give a report at each council meeting from planning commission, so essentially I'd be asking them to direct me back to planning commission to handle that. So I think it'd probably be easier if it just transferred that way.
Yeah, so if you just, I guess, expressed a willingness, I think they would likely assign it to you anyway. So
Okay.
it's just going to take it has to be brought up at council, and in order for it to be on planning commission agenda, it should be an assignment from council. So and especially for comp plan, that's going to be scrutinized by state and everybody else. We want to make sure we're following the process. So that way, if there's any question about why planning commission is doing this so early, it's.
Well, I think there's, next council meeting is not until August. And it might behoove you being present for that, because what I see happening is that I can make my presentation and tell the council what what we need to do. And that typically we have presented them with a essentially finished product, ask them to direct planning commission to go about that work, tell them that we have a grant, at about which time the papers will all start to fluster. And there will be people going, how much money, and who's paying for it, and who's controlling the money, and what budget's it going to, and
Well, you can circumvent that a bit by actually just having that all in writing, the packet. And the action item is having them direct you to bring it back to planning commission.
that would be excellent. And if Todd could write down the grant specifics, since you are the one that's signing off on the grant, is that correct?
I'm the one that's submitting the information required so that the city can start drawing on the grant. It's basically it's not a competitive grant process. The
Right.
city's already been awarded. It's $100,000 award based on your population size. But that's for a 2-year-long process. So it seems like a lot of money, but when you start, paying consultants over 2 years, it's not as much as you think. So, and we will have a few of them on there. We'll need an environmental consultant, and we'll also, like I said, need Gray and Osborne to do some information for water and sewer and transportation. So I've already talked to those groups. And then there are a lot of procedural elements and grant reporting pieces too that'll need to be factored in there.
And I know we as planning commission will have a number of issues that we didn't address last time, dealing with the setting up of and administering a planning department. How we're going to take care of records, storage, and the whole building permit process, which I'm hoping that we can move forward on these next few months, where our agenda is relatively light, is to start getting in place those contracts with the outside inspectors, find somebody that we'd like to be the experiment guinea pig on, because I believe the county has been made aware that we are going to start doing our own building permits and inspections.
We've talked to them about it, but we haven't taken any action to end that relationship or modify it. So I think that was you that was gonna somebody else other than me was taking the lead in contacting those cities and working on that.
I think that was Eric Hayes, and I think he spoke. What was her name? Niemeyer?
Lee Napier.
Yeah, Lee Napier.
Oh, Lee Napier. So
Yeah.
So I've also talked to Lee, so she knows that you all want to do that, but we haven't made anything. We haven't moved it forward with anything until we have another agreement that's pending, and then we'll notify the county that that either we're gonna modify our agreement with them as well, or what Lee had suggested to Eric was that the county could still stay on in a backup capacity. So that way, if we did do an interlocal with a neighboring jurisdiction and then went out for an RFP and hired a private contractor to do the work, that the county could be there as a backup source. So we could use them in the event that one of those two sources was unable to provide timely responses. And I thought that was really generous. And I think that might be something to consider.
I think so too. I think it'd be nice to have as many people on the back burner as you can possibly get for those instances when the perfect storm hits.
Yeah, yeah. And I also agree though that it's more efficient to have one group or one individual doing the plan review. That way they build a familiarity with the city. So to not spread it out unless you need to, unless you get too many applicants for one person or one group to provide a timely response.
Yeah, I think of course the city is envisioning in the near future or not so near future, having their own employee on staff to do those.
Yeah, soon enough, I'm sure. Yeah. Is the council meeting on Monday the 7th?
First Monday of the month.
Yeah, so that'll be Monday the 7th, and I'm out of town that day, so I wouldn't be able to assist in your discussion on that if you wanted to see if they could do that. But I think Cindy, from what I heard, Cindy had it in a nutshell. That's all we need to do is just get them to assign it to you.
And I will remind Eric about following up on that interlocal agreement.
Okay.
Since the council did not approve that particular work order of Todd's to actually do some of the preliminary negotiations with another city.
And I thought we already had. I mean, we interviewed Robert Webster and
Yes.
come to the conclusion. I know Todd had reached out to Brian over at Napavine. And Lee Napier is offering the county but we need to get those numbers
Yes.
on paper so that we have someplace to go when we actually need them.
I'll have Eric follow up with that.
Okay.
Yeah, and eventually you'll need an interlocal agreement that their council passes and your council passes, saying this is who's doing what and how it's happening and how the
But
payments.
that was when we approved their UGA.
That's right.
I don't have anything further. Anybody else have something they'd like to bring up?
No.
Joe, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, sir.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 And thank you for letting me attend by video tonight. It made a lot more sense than driving an hour to be there for half an hour.
Yes, it does.
I much appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Planning
that?
Commission.
Especially considering the room.
Yeah. One soldier.